Hey y'all, if you're already subscribed, welcome back my darling, and if this is your first time stopping by or you haven't already, subscribe and join a part of the Morgan Shay Beauty Gang. So welcome to episode number 7 of Beauty and Documentary Breakdown, where we break down this makeup tutorial right here, and also the Netflix sequel documentary I Am a Killer released on Netflix. It is so good. It's the whole first season. Please go watch it if you have not already before you watch the breakdown. My social medias are in the description box. If you follow me on social media, then you already have watched this, haven't you? Yes, you have, because I let you know days before I post Beauty and Documentary Breakdown so you can watch it so we can discuss it in the comment section down below. So, elephant in the room, I know this video was supposed to be uploaded on Friday, but my whole iPhone took a kapooey and the whole video disappeared. So I had to completely refilm it, which that is totally fine. I love you guys. Thank you for supporting me so much. I love every single one of you all. With my entire heart. Forget, there is going to be a secret emoji in this video somewhere. If you comment it down below, it will get you an extra entry into my 100 subscriber giveaway, which we're so close to. So a little bit about I'm a Killer released. It's in the title. This whole first season is about one individual, and I believe it was 4 or 5 episodes long, something like that. Not very long of a season, but this is about someone who went from death row to life to free out on the road. So, and it is a doozy, you guys. There is a lot of turns, twists, flips, and suspense in this one. So I'm so curious to hear your guys' opinion in the comments below. But we are going to keep it respectful, and we're also going to remember that it's okay if you don't agree with my opinion or someone else's opinion down in the comment section below. If I see people starting to get nasty and it's too much for me to keep up with, I will turn the comments off. We are going to be respectful of everyone's opinion, and we're also going to be respectful of the party, the deceased, the person who is no longer here to share their side, share their truth. We will not be talking negative, or I will delete this whole video, and I promise you. Don't mess with the Southern woman, because she keeps her promises. Yeah. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and get on into today's warning. Warning, today's video is going to contain several different things. So today we are going to be talking about rape. We're also going to be talking about child molestation, child rape. We're also going to be talking about drug use, using drugs at a young age, using drugs intravenously. We're also going to be talking about prison. We will also be talking about murder, description of a crime scene. We will also be discussing what I believe is a hate crime. So I do also want to have you all keep that in mind as well. Please, 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 if any of these things are triggering a sensitive or hard subject for you, please do not watch. You will not hurt my feelings at all. I love you, my darling. Anyways, there will be so many other videos linked up in the cards up here for you to go watch instead. Please go watch something else, and we'll see you in the next video. This video is intended for mature audience. Viewer discretion is highly advised. Okay, my loves, let's go ahead and get into episode number 7, Beauty and Documentary Breakdown, I'm a Killer released. 53-year-old Dale Ziggler in Arlington, Texas in April of 1990 murdered Subway employee John Zeltner. After the murder of John Zeltner, Ziggler would be sentenced to death in Texas. However, just 3 short years later, this sentence was overturned due to his lawyers actually got it overturned due to new jury selection rules. When it was overturned, he was then sentenced to life. Now in Texas, under Texas state law, after someone who is sentenced to life, spends 30 years in prison, they go up for parole. Now, in the state of Texas, after death was reintroduced in 1976, over 1,100 people in Texas have been sentenced to death for murder. Over 270 of those 1,100 get their sentence either commuted or overturned, so it's changed from death. So 1,100 are sentenced to death. 270 of those later get changed, so they get commuted or changed something different. And of those, 7 have went from death to walking out the doors. Today, we're going to be talking about one of those 7 people in Texas. Today, we're going to be talking about Dale Ziggler, inmate 999005. Now, when the documentary starts, it's kind of like narration style. So you can hear Ziggler speaking in the background, basically, like a narration. And you're seeing like an overview, like pan of Texas, okay? Trying to paint a picture. And what Ziggler is saying at this point is, you know, he knew God had another plan for him. And he knew that God had a purpose for him. And all he wanted was for people to give him another chance and opportunity to show that he was a changed person. After they have that little narration scene, they go to Brazoria, Texas. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this is the prison penitentiary unit where Ziggler was during the end of his sentence. It doesn't say how long he spent in this particular unit, but this is where he was at least the past couple of years. So at this point, when Netflix first introduces you to Ziggler at the very beginning of the documentary, he has been in prison for 27 years and 4 months. When they visit him in prison, he starts out by talking about his childhood. So when he's talking about his childhood, he starts off by saying, you know, that his mother had him when she was at a very young age. She was 15 years old. And he also talks about his dad. Now, he says that his dad was extremely, extremely abusive. And he said it would be nothing for his mom to have a black eye and broken bones at the same time. And that his mom was so scared of his dad that she literally slept with a kitchen butcher knife underneath her pillow. He then says that at the age of 10 years old, he was molested. And that this is when everything started to spiral kind of out of control. He said that he tried to tell his mom, he tried to tell people that this event had happened and that nobody was listening to him. Nobody, was listening to what he had to say, and that, this turned into an even bigger issue because at this point now he starts getting on drugs, hanging out with the wrong group of people. By the time he was a teenager, Ziggler says that he was a full-on drug addict. And he was on cocaine, methamphetamines, and he was doing them intravenously. Then Ziggler says by the age of 20, he was completely homeless, living on the streets, because at this point, his mom didn't know what to do with him. She pretty much was like, okay, I can't take it anymore. I can't handle you. And so he's completely homeless, living on the streets of Texas. He's hanging out with the wrong people, wrong crowd. He's doing drugs every single day. He said he was complete, full-blown addict, getting high every single day. That was what he was worried about, was getting his booze, getting his dope, and it was on to the next thing. So the night in April of 1990, okay, Ziggler goes to the Subway shop in Arlington, Texas. So he gets to the Subway shop, and what happens is, which we're not going to get into grave detail yet, we'll get there, I promise. But all I'm going to tell you all right now is that he robs $400 from the Subway and ends up shooting Zeltner in the chest 6 times. So then the documentary introduces you to Tommy Lenore, who was the lead detective on this case. And he's like driving in his car, and he says that, you know, he remembers the night, he remembers getting the call. And he goes to the Subway salmon shop, and he said that, it's nothing in Texas to get a phone call where there's been a robbery and a homicide. He said that is not, news really. He said it just happens that often. He said, but this was different. This was not like the norm, situation that they had in Arlington. This was different. He said it was very different in the sense that it was overkill. It was overkill, and he said that it was pointless. Someone comes in, shoots this man 6 times, robs of $400. So immediately they're thinking this is a robbery gone wrong. But then the detective says that the way that they found Zeltner, when they got there, it didn't seem that way. It almost seemed as if Zeltner was like running away from the situation. They found him in the back of the restaurant, and he just said that, this was odd. He mentioned, how much of an overkill situation this was. 6 days after Zeltner's murder, Ziggler is arrested for the murder, okay? And detectives basically were called by Ziggler's friends. They were like, look, a buddy of ours is like walking around town, like bragging, boasting about what he's done. And so we just wanted to call you all and let you guys know, like, this is your guy. Like, he's admitted to several of us that he committed this crime. So when they go and arrest Ziggler, he's like, normally we're expecting like a hassle. Like, we're expecting, them to say, oh no, that wasn't me, or whatever. He said it was the complete opposite. The complete opposite. He said that Ziggler said, yep, I did it. That was me. You got your guy. And he said that it was just very odd and very, very rare for someone to just be like, yep, that was me. So then they introduce you to Greg Miller. He was the state prosecutor on this case. And he said that right away they went for the death penalty. And he said that the reason that they went for the death penalty was because he said that the punishment needed to fit the crime. He said that is why they went for the death penalty. He said this was overkill. He agreed with the detective. He said that the crime needed to fit, that the punishment needed to fit the crime. And he said that is why they went forward with the death penalty. And he said that because of how pointless and overkill this murder was, he felt like that they needed to go after the death penalty. And that is exactly what they did. They went after the death penalty. This is also when the prosecutor mentions that his friends that like called him up and was like, hey, we've got your guy, it's so-and-so. He also says that they mentioned to detectives and the prosecutor that Ziggler was openly admitted that he did not like Zeltner. So this now creates a bond. This now creates like they knew one another, right? Keep that in mind. Then they flash back over to Ziggler, and he's talking about when he was first sentenced and put on death row, and he says that a guard comes and gets him and takes him over to the death row, side, and the guard like shouts out, dead man walking. And he said at that point, he felt like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And he says he felt like he was like in Green Mile, And as soon as he got to his cell, he started praying. And he just, said that he bowed down to God and, asked for forgiveness and told God that he was going to completely devote his life to him. He then tells the documentary that he started hearing these little voices in his head. And he says, I knew that these voices were God. And he said that this just enhanced his faith. This just made his faith even more than what it already was. And he says at this point, just shortly after he started hearing these voices, this is when his sentence was overturned. And that is when it spiraled. His faith spiraled. And at this point, he starts ministering to other prisoners, and he is an ordained minister. So now the documentary goes back to see Ziggler in the unit or prison. And he's been there now 29 years and 4 months. They're talking about his parole. And he still hasn't heard back at this point. And they're asking him, like, where are you going to go? Like, what are you going to do? You were homeless before you came here. So, like, what's your plan? And he's like, oh, I have somewhere to go. The documentary goes to Cade Lake, Texas. This little elderly lady. And she starts talking about how she met Ziggler. And she says that her stepson was actually in the same unit that Ziggler was in, and that is how she met him, through her stepson. And she said that they became pen pals. They started writing one another, and they just spoke all the time. Mama Carol, or Carol Whitworth, she said in the documentary that she feels like it is her calling. Like God called her to like help the helpless. And that is why she started like writing Ziggler so much, is because she wanted to help the helpless. She wanted to be there for him. She wanted to be that person that he could go to. Eventually, she walks over to like where her mail is, and she pulls out the letters that her and Ziggler have been writing one another. Y'all, at the time of this documentary, right before Ziggler had gotten out, they had been writing each other for 9 years. She starts to share like their little lingo that they would put at the end of every letter. He would put 831 at the end of every letter. And so the Netflix people are like, oh, well, what does that stand for? And she's like, oh, 8 letters, 3 words, 1 meaning, I love you. He puts it at the end. Now, me and one of my best friends watched this at the same time, and we were texting each other about it. And I was waiting for her to say something. I was like, so what do you think? And she was like, their relationship though? I'm like, girl. So we'll get there. We'll get to that part. But so basically, one of the terms for Ziggler to get out, he has to have a permanent residence, meaning this is where you're going to be until the parole officer is like, okay, you're good. You can go on your own. At least minimum of 12 months. Minimum, okay? So he hits up Mama Carol, and he's like, hey, Mama Carol, I was just wondering, can I stay with you for a minimum of 12 months? And Mama Carol says that at first she had like a split second of hesitation, but then immediately she was like, no, what are you thinking? Of course he can stay here. So that's the plan. That's where Ziggler is going to go. So they had been waiting for 3 years to hear back from parole. And they finally hear back from parole. And of course, you know the name of this documentary, he gets out. Mama Carol is so excited. She's getting him a room ready. You know, she's getting everything ready for Ziggler to come to her house and live with her. Netflix does ask Ziggler, hey, like, do you have any worries about leaving? Like, bro, you've been in here for 30 years. There's been some mega changes since 1990. Y'all, that is literally almost my whole lifetime. I was born in 1989. So I'll be 31 this December. So he was literally in there pretty much my entire life. That's crazy. Like, just think about it that way. Like, 30 years is a long time, you know? Like, and when I think about like how things were in 1990 and how they are now, I mean, it was just a completely different time. You got to think like cell phones, like they were extremely rare. And if you did have them, they were huge. They were like the size, and he says in the documentary, he don't even remember cell phones. He don't even remember them. He don't remember seeing no computers ever, nothing. Plus, you also got to remember that he was homeless at the time, so they take you to Arkansas. And in Arkansas, you were introduced to two of the Zeltner brothers. I'm not sure how many brothers there were, but they only showed two. And they were considered half brothers, but they were his brothers, okay? And they're fishing, and like Netflix is like asking, you know, like, what was his personality like and things like this. And they're saying, oh, well, if he was here, we'd be laughing. We were always laughing around him. He always kept us laughing, and they're just talking about it. And one of the older brothers, you can tell that he's a little bit more, I don't know the right word. Like, he just is more calm on the situation, where the younger brother, you can tell, has still a lot of animosity, which they were saying that he was like very young, like he was only like 13. He was a very young teenager when this happened to their brother. And he still has like a lot of animosity, a lot. And which I'm not saying that the older brother doesn't have any animosity. Of course, he's still pissed. And that is literally the word that I have written down here to describe how they were, because that's what they kept saying, like, we're pissed. They literally even say that they didn't even know that he was getting out. They didn't even know that he was getting out. They found out through freaking Netflix. I would be infuriated that nobody like called and said, hey, the man who murdered your brother is paroling out. I didn't really say like why that like tore them away, like why they were reunited. But right before Zeltner's murder, they had just been reunited. And I'm not sure if it was like a family thing, like maybe the family had a hard time like accepting it, because they did say that was him. He was gay, and either you accepted it or you didn't, but that was who he was. Over to Mama Carol's family. And it's actually her grandson and her grandbaby and his wife, her grandson's wife. And she is just now letting them know that she is having a convicted murderer move in with her. Lets them know that he's going to be living with her for at least a year, you know, all this and that. And to be honest, they're really chill about it. And to each his own, you know, that's her life. And if that's what makes her happy, so be it. But I would be more concerned. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would just be more like, what? We need more details. Like, what happened? And here's the kicker. At this point in the documentary, y'all, she don't even know how it happened. She does not even know how it happened. And I mean, yeah, a murder, whatever. But like, come on now. Like, how? Like, what happened? And that's literally the first thing her grandson's wife asks, is like, oh my gosh, well, how did it happen? And she's like, I don't know. What? So then comes the day of Ziggler's release from prison. After spending 10,000 nights in prison, he is finally released. And of course, Mama Carol goes and picks him up. And he comes out with just a bag of clothes, which I'll have on the screen right now. They actually have one of the cover arts for the documentary with him walking out of the prison. That is the outfit he was wearing in the documentary. That's the little sack of clothes he had. And they hit the road. Immediately upon hitting the road, he's like, wow, things have definitely changed. He's talking about like how different everything looks, and you know, just everything's changed. Of course it has. It's been 30 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course, there's been a huge change since you've been in there, buddy. Like, of course. So let me just tell you guys about this probation he's about to be on, or parole, I should say. This is super intensive parole, okay? Very. He is wearing a GPS anklet all the time, okay? He is not allowed to socialize in public unless it is approved by his probation officer a week ahead of time. So he has to go see his probation officer every single week. And anytime that she calls and says, hey, I want to see you right now. Also, like I mentioned earlier, he has to stay with Mama Carol for a minimum of the next 12 months. It could be much longer than that. He's wearing that GPS tracker. If he breaches that GPS tracker at all, he's going back immediately. So immediately after it shows Ziggler getting out of prison, it pans over to one of the friends who was part of calling the police and letting them know that Ziggler had been talking about committing this murder, and also that he did not like Ziggler. And y'all, the first thing his friend says, or ex-friend, I guess I should say, is that, oh, he did not like, because Netflix asks, like, why didn't he like Ziggler? And this friend is like, oh, because he was gay. He was homophobic. It was because he was gay. That's why. So keep that disgusting shit in mind, because it's going to be important, unfortunately. Ziggler did not have any visitors at all other than Mama Carol. And before that, his mother hadn't visited him since 1997. She had been like bedbound and wasn't able to leave her home. And at the point that Ziggler is released, she is like completely bedbound and cannot leave her home, which she is living in California. The night that he is released, Mama Carol like shows him how to get on her laptop, and he Skypes with his mother. Now, I will just say that this is a very emotional part of the documentary, and you know, I do feel for his mother. At first, you guys, Ziggler was very excited. He had big plans for when he got out of prison. And immediately upon being released and being out in society, his plans, he started to realize like how unrealistic his plans actually were. I mean, you got to think about it, y'all. He's been in prison for 30 years. He has no experience working except for bagging groceries. That was the last job he had. I mean, he was basically turned 21 and went to prison and had been in there, and then he turned 53 and got out. He didn't have any like job experience, but he had this plan. So Netflix is asking, you know, what are your plans? And this is before like things really start. He starts to like actually realize like, you know, things are different. You have to have certifications. You have to have degrees for things. And he's like, oh yeah, I want to, you know, be a truck driver and, you know, travel across the country. And I also want to have my own traveling ministry where I can talk to people about and tell them my testimony. He gets permitted in this portion of the documentary to go to an interview. Now, this interview is at like, if you're familiar with like a Randstad vibe, okay? So like if you're not familiar with Randstad, it's like a, what do you call it? Like a hiring company. So you go there, they interview you, and they find you a job. So it's kind of like a job placement type deal, okay? But he gets allowed to go to this interview, okay? He gets there, and on the way there, he's telling Netflix that he wants to be the truck driver. You know, he's talking about wanting to be a truck driver. He wants to travel, da-da-da-da-da. What I think, I mean, not funny, but it's like just odd. Like, you know good and well those Netflix people knew, you know, you have to have a CDL to be able to be a truck driver. Like, hello. They don't even tell him. They're like, oh, okay, you know, yeah, keep your hopes high. Keep your hopes high, buddy. And he goes into this hiring place, okay? And these people did not know that this man, like this lady is interviewing him just like any old normal Joe. So she's like, oh, okay, so what experience do you have? And he's like, bagging groceries at the grocery store. Or no. First, he's like, she asked him, you know, so what do you want to do? Like, what are you interested in? Because you guys, they have like a system full of like every job that you could probably think of. So they asked him that to like narrow down the playing field. So he's like, yeah, I want to be a truck driver. And she's like, oh, okay, great. Do you have your CDLs? Or no, she's like, oh, okay, great. Well, have you ever been a truck driver before? And he's like, no. And she's like, oh, okay. Have you had any training at all? And he's like, no. And she's like, oh, okay. Do you have your CDLs? And he's, of course, like, no. And that's when he says, yeah, the only experience I have is bagging groceries. I've been in prison for the past 30 years. And y'all should have just seen the look on this woman's face. It almost looked as if she wanted to just crawl out of her own body. So, of course, Ziggler does not get he doesn't get a job. It's because, well, what they put on the screen, the reason why he didn't get the job is because he doesn't have any experience, which, I mean, I feel like somebody should have, told him, was the call not screened when he called to set up this interview? Did they not ask him? You know what I'm saying? I feel like his probation officer should have, had something, lined up for him. People who have been incarcerated a long time, I thought that things were lined up for them for when they got out so that they could adapt a little easier, but I guess it's different depending on where you're at. I don't know. Anyways, immediately after this job falls through, he's getting super frustrated. He's getting frustrated about everything. He's getting frustrated because he don't know how to work a computer. He's getting frustrated because he needs all these things and certificates and license to get the job that he wants. And so Mama Carol is like, look, you need to calm down. You're putting way too many eggs in one basket. You're putting way too many things on your plate. You need to slow down. And he's just not listening. He's just going full throttle. The next scene, it shows Mama Carol and Ziggler going to one of his parole appointments to see his parole officer. Now, of course, they can't take the camera in there, that's against the law, but they're on the way there, and Ziggler all of a sudden tells Mama Carol he sees a Subway. They're about to pass a Subway. And he tells Mama Carol, he's like, oh yeah, I'll never be able to go inside of one of those stores or, pass by one and not, it will never be the same. And again, guys, at this point, Mama Carol still does not know how Ziggler murdered Zeltner. At this point, she still has no idea. And so Mama Carol is like, oh, I'm just so sorry, And he starts crying. It's, real emotional. And so right immediately after that, the Netflix documentary crew, they ask Mama Carol, in a different scene, has he told you, how this murder happened yet? And she said yes. And she also says, they're asking her, well, how is everything going? And she said, well, everything went really smooth at first, and then he just put way too much on his plate, and he got disappointed because he put way more on his plate, and he thought things were going to go one way and they're going a completely different way. And she said that she just keeps reminding him, you need to focus on one thing at a time, and everything in time will come. They also let you know at this point that he is completely forbidden from contacting the victim's family. So Ziggler cannot contact the family members for any reason. Now, of course, the family's thoughts, Zeltner's brother's thoughts on him being out of prison, him getting the parole, of course they're pissed. I mean, that's their exact words. That's exactly what they say. They're pissed. They're upset. And they also even say that the Texas justice system needs a lot of help. They need some work. If they're letting someone who committed, such a violent murder for no reason, they need to get their shit together. They need to figure it out, because they shouldn't just be letting, someone who's committed this type of murder out after 30 years. He shouldn't be out. So now, you guys, this is where I start to really lose faith in anything that Ziggler says. So at this point, he changes the motive, the reason why he did what he did. This is where Ziggler changes it. And So Ziggler says that him and Zeltner were friends. They were really good friends. He says that when he needed a place to stay, that Zeltner would let him stay at his house. And because of this, they became incredibly close. And also, Ziggler also says that he was fully aware that Zeltner was gay and there hadn't been any issues. He said they used to hang out together and everything was completely and totally fine. Well, Ziggler says that one in particular night, they are hanging out like normal. They're just hanging out. He said it gets really late at night, and so he decides to go ahead and go to sleep. He says after he has went to sleep that he is woken up by Zeltner being on top of him. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is all a one-sided narrative, all according to Ziggler. Now, Ziggler also mentioned that he had shared all of the things that happened to him when he was a child. He shared that he had been molested and all of this, and that Zeltner had become someone that he was comfortable with talking about these things. And so when he woke up with Zeltner being on top of him, it freaked him out and he panicked. And he was like, whoa, 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 like, what are you doing? What are you doing? He claims that Zeltner says, you know, if you don't do it, if you don't do this, then I'm going to tell everyone that you did anyway. Ziggler then says, quote, I told him that if he did that, I was going to kill him, end quote. And that was his exact words. So, the rest is history, okay? So, according to Ziggler, the night that he went to the Subway shop, he had full intentions of murdering Zeltner. He went there to murder Zeltner because he says, quote, I was being blackmailed into a homosexual relationship, end quote. As soon as he says this, they pan over to New Beginnings Chapel Church, okay? And Ziggler is there, and he says that his parole officer talked him into going to this church. He goes, they have him stand up and tell his testimony, and you guys, he literally retells the motive, okay, as his testimony. You all, here's the thing, okay? Let's bring in the prosecutor first. So they play this clip for the prosecutor and the lead detective, and they're like, so what do you all think about this new motive, okay? They're like, what do you mean? Like, okay, here's the thing, like, so what? If he did go and tell people, like the prosecutor said, he was a homeless man living on the streets. Like, this was well before social media was even a thing. So, like, what is he going to do? Go tell 10 drug addicts down the street that you slept with him? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they say. And he even says, Ziggler says in the documentary, still to this day, that he believes that, you know, homosexuals is an abomination to God and that they are going to hell. But that he has no problem with homosexuals. He also says that this is the truth. This is his truth. This is what happened. He said that people, you know, keep saying, oh, there has to be more to it. There has to be more to it. He said that is all there is to it. That is the full story. That is the truth. And like the prosecutor said, either story is damning. Either you killed someone for $400 or you killed someone because they said they were going to tell people that you had sex with them. Like, either way is like overkill, unnecessary. But I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. I just don't, but I will share my opinion in the end. Also, at the time of filming, the Zeltner brothers or family had no idea of this newfound motive. Of course, I'm sure they've watched the documentary and now they know. And I would just be very curious to know what they think about this new found motive of his. Ziggler also says the reason why he didn't like tell anyone like back when all this happened, that he was being, his whole new motive deal, he was being blackmailed, blah, blah. He says because it wouldn't have mattered and he didn't feel like anyone would believe him. So then it lets you know that 3 months after that scene in the documentary, they show you Ziggler is driving and he's on his way to work. He got a job at a ranch. And it shows, I'll put a picture on the screen right now of him there at work at this ranch. And he says that he loves going there every day, enjoying the peace and quiet. He said after being in a prison for 30 years, it was always so loud and always so much commotion. And he loves to just go there and relax and listen to the nothingness. He also says that he will never take life for granted again, and that he really does look forward to the little things in life. Carol says that he can live there however long he wants. However, Ziggler does say that he, does want to meet a woman and have a family and have his own place. But now is the time where I'm going to let you guys know, like me and my best friend, Ashley, we were discussing it. Like, they have a really weird relationship. Watch it, please. All of these beauty and documentary breakdowns, I hope that you guys go watch. And if you follow me on social media, I always announce days before I'm going to post the breakdown, what documentary I'm doing, so you guys can go watch it, because you just have to kind of watch them to get what I'm saying. But they have a really, I almost get that like sense that maybe Carol has a thing for Ziggler, and Ziggler is just like there, I don't know, to have somewhere to stay, really. But Carol says she has his back no matter what, and that she loves him. So then a year after, they catch back up with Ziggler, and he no longer has his job. He lost his job at the ranch, and he's still looking for employment, and he is still living with Mama Carol. So let's go ahead and get into my final thoughts and my opinion. Now, like we did mention earlier, y'all, this is my opinion and my opinion only. So if you don't agree with my opinion, that is completely and totally fine. It will all be all right. Opinions are like assholes, and we all got one. So for me, just keeping it really, really real, I don't buy it. I don't buy it, because you have to think, okay, if this was to happen today in today's society, okay, I don't even know if I would even care now, because, okay, you put it on social media, but still, like, everybody who knows me knows that you're lying. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, and plus, like, people, like, they, like, hear one thing today, but then tomorrow they hear 10 other things. It's not like they're going to have that on their mind. I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think that something else had to happen. A lot of other people from the area where this happened and the people who knew them, they believe that this was a hate crime or something to that effect. Like, he had a thing against him being gay, and he killed him. He robbed him and killed him because of it. And I have to say that my opinion is not far from that at all. Like, that is honestly what I believe. That is my opinion. I also believe that the prosecutor, pretty much everybody involved, believes the same thing, just because nothing else makes any sense. Like, nothing else does. So, yeah, that is my opinion. This one is a doozy. Also, with the whole Mama Carol and him relationship, I'm curious to know, like, how that really ends, because I really feel like Mama Carol, like, actually, like, loves him, and that he is just there because he has nowhere else to go. He has to stay within the state of Texas, and that's where Mama Carol lives. His mother, the only other family that he really has to call to, lives in California, so we can't go live with her. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I don't know. There's just a lot to this. I'm really curious to hear your guys' opinion. Remember, we're going to keep them respectful or I'm going to be deleting the comments. I will turn them off. So let's be respectful. And yeah, you guys, I hope you did enjoy episode number 7 of Beauty and Documentary Breakdown. Hope you did also enjoy this look we did today with the Tati Beauty palette and some more fun makeup. Always do remember that all the makeup used is always linked down in the comment section down below. Also, do not forget to comment the secret emoji down below for extra entries into my 100 subscriber giveaway, which you guys know we are getting closer and closer and closer to. As I'm filming this, we're almost to 80, so we're getting very close. So be sure to comment those secret emojis down below. And yeah, you guys, again, I hope you did enjoy. And until next time, my loves, bye.